Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook video updated on Tuesday evening, the 9th of January. Now, it's a relatively benign pattern in the short term, generally chilly, and we've got not too much variation with temperature with height, it must be said, but most terrain remaining frozen and areas of low cloud that may allow some of the higher tops to poke through above it at times. Heading towards the weekend, it looks as though eventually some fronts will come in from the west, but the air remains cold and accumulations of snow look more believable as we go through the weekend into the early part of next week. Now let's have a look at those temperature charts, and this is at around 4,500 feet in the atmosphere. Starting off with the short term, this is Wednesday. You're around freezing or just below on most of the higher mountains, but not that much change with height. So you'll be seeing terrain frozen from low levels up, only maybe just a very slow drop of temperature. I think even some higher tops over the next day or so may find themselves above freezing as an inversion is in place, so some of the glens and the valleys may stay at freezing or below. Some of the highest tops may just be above freezing and even poking out above some banks of low cloud, but really an awkward one in terms of local detail, so keep a close eye on all your local written files. Going forwards over a few days towards the weekend, then we just see a brief lift in temperature try and come in from the southwest, but again it's barely lifting above freezing, and I think many of the mountain terrain essentially remaining frozen from low levels up through this stage. Fronts trying to come in, but they don't do a great deal for the temperatures. We hover around or just below freezing. No great depths of cold compared to what we saw last weekend, but it's staying frozen pretty much all the way through. And as we just go into the start of next week, we do try and see something slightly colder coming in from the Atlantic. Temperatures at around 4,000 feet may dip to -4, -5. But the main message to take from this, either way, is that terrain is remaining frozen. There's no great thaw of any lying snow on those higher tops, so that's the important thing, particularly for the Scottish Highlands. England and Wales may just see slight freeze and thaw cycles, but temperatures not rising too much above freezing, so no major thaw even there. So it's good news really, and there will be some further snowfall accumulations to add to what's already in place as we go forwards into next week. Let's have a run through the charts. In the short term briefly, Wednesday has got a slack pressure pattern. The remnants of a front across eastern regions may hang on across eastern Scotland, perhaps even the eastern Pennines for a good few hours, a mixture of rain, sleet and snow, but never amounting to a great deal on the whole. An awkward leftover mix of low cloud. Some places it may start to break up and see something better as the day goes on. Now what remains of that front will just fade away into the North Sea on Thursday. Pressure building from the west. Again, very little wind around for many areas. Still some banks of low-level cloud and mist, but most higher tops that should be above that low cloud and seeing some sunshine extensively, or you might just be between cloud layers in a few spots. Essentially a dry story then all the way through. Terrain remaining frozen, as we said, and not too much change of temperature with height. And if you're above the cloud, you may just be a few degrees above freezing. Similar picture into Friday, although by this stage the wind from the south is just picking up, particularly across more exposed western regions, West Wales, up the west coast of Scotland as time goes on Friday, so strengthening winds with time. A dry picture though all the way through, but again you're looking at the risk of banks of low-level cloud, most likely though the higher tops being above the cloud all the way through. Northern Scotland faring best overall for breaks pretty extensively. The northern Cairngorms and the northwest Highlands, with perhaps the exception of Skye, seeing a bright day overall. Now, fronts are trying to encroach in from the west into Saturday. Some uncertainty still how far they get. Once they're running up against high pressure and cold air to the east, they do tend to struggle to make any great inroads. So at this stage, it looks as though a front lies somewhere across Ireland and the southwest of England and Wales. There's a chance that may get a bit further north, and it might well bring some snow to the southwestern side of Scotland if it can just move in there. So just be aware of that one at this stage. Most likely, though, the far north and maybe most of Scotland and most of the Pennines stays dry, but just that awkward mix again of areas of low cloud and some of the higher tops being above that cloud layer and temperatures remaining near to freezing or below. Now, subtle changes by Sunday. Again, difficulty with timing, just how things move in. It looks as though a frontal system coming in off the Atlantic just gives that first system a bit of a kick out of the way and some mobility comes in. So we're looking at a strengthening southwesterly wind. The risk of gales developing if that system is coming in quickly enough, and it may just introduce some moisture, essentially snow, across the Highlands as a front edges in there. A brief lift in freezing level elsewhere as just that warm sector tries to come in, but it's not a particularly strong one. So I think as soon as any fronts are coming in, most of the precipitation, particularly in the Highlands, is falling as snow. So that's just one to be keeping an eye on at this stage. I think across England and Wales, particularly at lower levels, that moisture just coming in as rain, but extensively snow most likely as it comes into the Highlands. Now through into next week, we look as though we've got a more pronounced westerly regime in place, fairly unsettled with low pressure near to us. But that air is coming round more from Greenland, so it's never coming in as a mild westerly. We're always staying on the colder side of things, so precipitation, showers, occasionally some more organised bands coming in essentially as snow across the mountains all the way through as we go into next week. And that chilly westerly regime off many of the models is there over a good many days. Wind speeds may vary from day to day, the risk of gales coming through at some point, but there could be quite marked lulls as well, particularly across Scotland, nearer to the centre of low pressure, especially if the whole thing just opens out quite a bit. Now, as we go further ahead, then we look as though we stay in a generally colder air mass, and that low just sinking a little bit further south, which may start to allow something to come round a bit more from the north. So it's a pressure pattern that looks something like this, I think, for next week. That's the whole 7 days through until the 22nd. Low pressure is on the scene across northwestern Europe, but it's rather blocked in between big areas of high pressure, one of which is over the eastern side of North America, another is around the pole and into northern Scandinavia. So we're never seeing a genuinely active Atlantic weather pattern coming in, so no really mild air coming in off the Atlantic, given that blocking over the western half of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's the high pressure towards the polar regions that's important to try and draw in colder air masses as we go forwards. And from some of the indications, we could be on the cusp of a quite interesting spell as we go towards the second or final part of January and even into February. If that blocking over the pole stays in place, we might find that colder times are very much here to stay. A long way off to get the detail, but that seems to be some of the trends that are coming out at the moment. So we'll see how things go, and we'll update you on that longer range outlook in the next planning video on Friday. And of course, all your local details and the written files updated every single day here at the Mountain Weather Information Service website. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.